So, charter, all about charter. We're going to start this session by me introducing the panellists, always a good move. Will Fanshawe, MD, Flex Helicopters, and Jordan Smith, Head of Ground Operations, Rotary SaxonAir Charter. I want to start off by inviting each of you to share opening thoughts about the charter market before we drill down into the sources of growth, some of the roadblocks and how we can overcome those. So let's start with Will. Opening thoughts, please.
So yeah, really concentrating on the kind of the UK charter market. Certainly, Europe is not as busy as the UK, and it's, the UK is certainly seen as the busiest charter market within Europe. So kind of concentrating on that, which is where Jordan and my experience really lies. It's a complicated one because most of the helicopters in the UK charter market are principally owned by individuals who offset some of their costs through charter. So it's a challenging environment, and really availability and access to those aircraft is the key issue. But it is a busy market. It centres around Battersea to some extent, which is, as I'm sure most of you know, is the only licensed heliport in central London. Not a perfect place to be, especially with the situation with bridges in London at the moment. But getting people to that aircraft, to that heliport is the challenge. Obviously, there's a lot of charter that goes on up and down the country and across the country, but it's certainly London-centric. And then you've got a crazy period of time which we enter week after next as we go into the special events season, as they're called. And for Jordan and I, that basically means we start with Royal Ascot, following week is Glastonbury, following week Silverstone, following week Festival of Speed, followed by the Open the week after. So you've got 5 weeks where pretty much every helicopter in the country will be chartered, and everyone crazily running around. We can talk about whether we're busy fools or not on that particular mission, but it's really the height of the season. And both twin and single engines have high utilisation during that. And then we go back to a fairly steady flow of charters for the rest of the year.
Okay, you mentioned UK being the leading market in Europe. Why is Europe not bigger, do you think?
It's a good question. I mean, we're about to put an S-76 into Italy for the summer, just to kind of wind up the Leonardo folks amongst you, into the heart of Milan. But we're putting an aircraft to serve Flexjet clients. But looking at where best to base it in Italy was quite interesting because, there's the Milan, there's the lakes, but then actually, as the summer progresses, people tend to move further south. And actually, it is more dissipated. It is trying to find a good centre of operations is tricky. Obviously, you've got the south of France, which is very much tied up by the French operators. They're pretty busy doing the Nice-Monaco runs and Saint-Tropez runs. You've got Paris as a centre, and a reasonable heliport, although it's under a lot of change at the moment. It's reducing its footprint. They've just changed the operator. They've suddenly realised they can charge close to €1,000 a landing rather than about 120, which they've been doing for the last 20 years, and suddenly realised actually can charge some more landing fees. Geneva, obviously a hotbed for private jet movements. The airport's very close to the city centre. There's a bit of movement into the Alps during the winter, but again, very, very few kind of corporate VIP charter machines. There's plenty of utility machines that will do a bit of heli skiing, but multi-pilot, twin-engine aircraft in Switzerland, very, very few and far between.
Okay, thank you for that summary. Jordan Smith, Rotary SaxonAir Charter, information on landing fees, optional. What's your view?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one with the landing fees at the moment. There are places that kind of have the monopoly of, or not the monopoly, but they are the only option to go to, certainly in London. Obviously, quite a lot of the clients now are very well used to paying those type of fees to land, well, like you said, depending on the state of the traffic, are very close to home or very much closer to home than the alternative options that are much cheaper. You can, with some clients who are a little bit more price sensitive, you can easily knock, £2,000 to £3,000 off of a charter by suggesting that they drive out to, one of the satellite airfields out on the M25, Elstree or Denham, and which some people do. Some people can't quite justify. They're happy to pay for the helicopter, but they're not happy to nearly pay the same again in a landing fee for to land at Battersea and same with some of the major airports now, which we do a lot of interlining with. They're getting on to, I think Luton now is £1,700-1,800 for a small helicopter just to land in. So yeah, it's an interesting one. There are ways around it, of course. We can land in golf clubs nearby, but obviously some clients want the seamlessness of the door-to-door service, landing next to their jet on the apron. So.
Yeah. Anything else we need to know in general about charter before we start to drill down?
No, I think as Will said, it's probably very unique compared to some of the other players in this room. We do rely very heavily on, out of my 8 helicopters, we only own 1 ourselves. The rest are all managed, and then you get into the world of the availability, getting it off the owners and getting owners release for those aircraft. So, as Will says, it's never as straightforward as because we have 8 aircraft on our fleet. It doesn't mean that all 8 are available for charter at the beck and call of our clients. So you're constantly getting owners release and juggling their usage with obviously then some charter.
Okay. Will, can you help us with metrics? Can we put any numbers or feelings about the size of the fleet, mission hours, that kind of thing?
If you're talking about the whole charter, the charter fleet, I don't know whether, there's been, there obviously the stats are out there. You can go onto G-Info and look at the number of aircraft on the charter market. A lot aren't used for charter. Some are available for charter but don't charter. I would say kind of regular charter aircraft in the UK is probably around about 100. Of which there's probably 40 that are really real regulars that you'll see day in, day out going in and out of London. That kind of number. Difficult to judge. I know the great guys Richard at WingX has tried to evaluate helicopters, but unlike jets, when you've got a departure and a landing place, it's very difficult to track helicopters and from a third party. I know whether Cirium have looked at it, tried to look at what the onshore charter market looks like. And again, are the aircraft on charter or are they flying for the owners?
Yeah. Jordan, is your sense that's about right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is quite a hard metric to track, even presenting to our directors, trying to get some, analysis on our market. It is quite niche. And as Will said, it's trying to understand who is it an owner flying from his private house to a business meeting, or is it a charter? So I think it's data that's going to be quite hard to come by. We obviously can get a good gauge from, especially around the special events, through our partners who run the heliports. So Silverstone, I think, speaking to the colleagues there that run that heliport, you get a good gauge of how busy our industry is by the amount of movements potentially at Silverstone. So I know on one weekend, I think it was 2023's numbers, there was 900 movements into Silverstone over a weekend. Obviously, the majority of those being on the Sunday of the GP itself. But other than that, it is a tricky one to ascertain. It is a small corner of the market, so there's probably aren't too many data analysis companies that are really looking into it, as I said with WingX. And again, even if so, it is tricky to do.
And staying with Jordan's, what's your sense of the split between high net worth individuals and corporates making these charter flights?
It's a really healthy split, to be honest. I'd say, in my opinion, or from what we see on our side, it's a good 50-50. We've got a lot of business in and out of London, with where most of our helicopters are based. But we do have, an AS50 single squirrel based up at Norwich, and that is more used for your local clients out in Norfolk who have got that high net worth, and they go to Newmarket races for the day, or we fly them down to Ascot, and then right back onto the corporate side with the bigger twin engine machines in and out of Biggin Hill, Farnborough, Stansted, Luton, bringing corporate clients off their corporate jets for business meetings in the city. Yeah.
Well, I know you've touched on this, but is that your sense too, 50-50 split?
Yeah, I think it's always difficult with ultra high net worth individuals as to whether they're on business or not, because
Yes.
they'll say they're always working, especially when the tax man is talking to them. But whether they're on leisure or at work is very difficult to ascertain. Flexjet helicopters, we were established to really look after Flexjet fractional clients. And our related companies, our jet car company, Sentient Jet. So we've got about 10,000 contracted clients, mainly in the US,
Right.
who within the fixed wing world that come in, and they use the helicopters either. They get them as part of their fraction. So if you have a G650 fraction with Flexjet, you'll get a number of transfers which you can use both in New York, Miami, or in London, and they're using those really to move from airport into the city. We've kind of more corporate, less kind of away days where groups of people off to the races for the day, maybe chartering 2 or 3 times a year. Ours tend to be kind of regular clients that we see pretty much year round.
Yeah.
And then a little bit more spike. At the moment we're busy. American holidays are on at the moment, so we've got a lot of visitors over from the States coming into Europe.
And tell us a little more about that tie-up between the helicopter and the fixed-wing service. So we've talked about this previously, and you've said that it's pilots wearing the same uniform with the same ratings. Tell us a little more about that transference from fixed-wing to rotary, please.
Yeah, so I certainly kind of looking at it from the US side, we all know the helicopter, the attitudes towards helicopter and risk in the US. If you're looking as a US, let's say you're a US flight department and you're looking at chartering a helicopter in the UK, really where to go is a difficult one. We tend in the UK not to get involved in Wyvern Wingman, Argus, Isbeo, because we're regulated very heavily by the CAA anyway. That's obviously not the case in the States. They have a much more open charter market. And so the US certainly US clients coming into the UK, they don't really know where to go. And so for us, showing that Flexjet helicopters and Flexjet are one company, we're fully owned, Flexjet helicopters fully owned by Flexjet Operations. We have a single AOC in the UK and another one in Malta, which have both helicopters and fixed wing on the same AOC. And it's just getting the kind of statement after, HR is the same, the safety culture is the same. The Director of Safety runs both fixed wing and rotary. The Director of Flight Ops covers both parties. So it's just explaining that you're not getting into a Robinson with a low time private pilot. It's a multi-engine, in our case multi-pilot operation that is run to the same standard as an airline. And so the basic things like having the crew, so if you just come across the Atlantic and you get out, the pilots are wearing the same uniform. Actually, we encourage, and mostly does happen, is the captain will come down from the jet, walk the passengers over them, and introduce them to me by name if I'm standing there as a pilot taking them onto the helicopter. So you're transferring that operation. And it starts, if we're coming out of Manhattan, we'll come out of Manhattan on a 76, Flexjet 76, onto the Flexjet aircraft, across into Farnborough, Luton, wherever we go. And then, so you're going Manhattan to Mayfair is the tagline. And actually, it's a 25% saving on your journey time. And if you're a G650 owner with us, you can exchange your hours. And again, it makes it a seamless event.
Okay, thank you, Will. Jordan Smith, SaxonAir. To what extent are you in the reassurance business as well?
Yeah, it's obviously, as Will said, any event, even around the world, even out in the States, a small accident somewhere.
And we've had a few of those recently.
We have, and genuinely, I certainly see it from my side. When we do have these accidents, especially when they're in the media and they do sadly result in fatalities, we can lose work. And even though it is something so, the incident that most likely happened could be a complete different type of operation, most likely a private pilot in a small Robinson who's not quite qualified to be doing what he should have been doing at that point in time. How that then reflects on our operation, which is a fully regulated AOC commercial operation, but it happens, and the reason that happens is most of the high net worth individuals, they just see helicopter crash on the news. And they don't look into it beyond that because they're worth millions and they're up to all sorts in the day. So they don't do their due diligence clearly, and then maybe the PA won't understand either. So generally, a few years ago we were flying an A-lister for, I think he booked 30 or 40 trips for a tour. And during that tour, we were flying him twin crew on a 109. Midway through the tour, there was a G2, I believe, somewhere up in the north of England, a little G2 aircraft that crashed. Sadly, there was, I think, some fatalities. He cancelled the next 5 trips. And we had to go and see his flight team, and obviously persuade them that we are very different to the unfortunate people in the little G2. But that generally has an effect, and that I don't know whether maybe that's what Will thinks with. It's just the type of clients we have that don't understand the market, and like I said, see the headline and panic.
So thank you for using.
Sorry, just add to that, Mike. I mean, I think Europe is the use of helicopters. There is less concern about safety, but in the States, I mean, we had a promotion at one stage when we first started doing helicopter transfers. If you flew into any of the New York airports on a Flexjet fixed wing, you could have a complimentary trial Flexjet, and the number of people who gets now, I won't take the 6-minute flight. I'll get into a limo for an hour and a half. It is a real issue. Yeah.
So, Jordan, thank you for using the C word, crash. All too often we hear of events which are a little less personal. I wanted to come back to Will and ask, is it my fault? Is it weekend pilots getting into light aircraft in bad weather that sully the whole industry, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just, as Jordan says, it's just people treating the fixed wing. The similarities would be, comparing a Cessna crashing during a training flight at a little airfield and going, well, I'm not going to get in this airliner. I think helicopters, they're just helicopters, and they're all the same in the eyes of people who have not had the experience of flying in them, or don't understand them.
Jordan, you mentioned Squirrel earlier. What type of helicopters are flying charter missions? Let's name names.
Yeah, so we've got quite a varied fleet, and actually between the two of us here, we sort of range from the smaller end of my aircraft up to the light twins, and then Will's machines take over right up to the top end range as about as big as you can get with one of his machines. Which is a great broad spectrum for us, because the smaller machines are they're more charter friendly, they're cheaper. So we have that exposure to what we call credit card clients, customers that they might not be high net worth individuals, but they can whack a pleasure flight or a wedding flight on a credit card and pay it over a couple of months, for example. So that's brilliant. That's why we have a couple of singles, and we still see them as viable. We're not going to be doing corporate interlines for the top 1%, but there is still work out there. Everyday people do want to fly on a helicopter. It's generally on quite a lot of people's bucket lists. So whilst I wouldn't want to overrun the market with lots and lots of single engines, because they'd all get less busy, but I think us having the majority of them at the moment, we've got 4 to become 5, is about right, and there aren't too many other operators that have many other single engines. And then we transition then to the 109s, which we normally have between 3 and 4 Augusta 109s, Grand News, and then they sweep up the sort of higher net worth corporate clients for, as we were saying earlier, for all varied trips. Your Cheltenhams, your Glastonburys, all the way through to your interlining off your Gulfstream at Stansted into central London. Yeah.
Will, can you tell us any more about your fleet?
Yep. So when I started in the business, I always said we'll have one aircraft type, keep it simple. Slowly that's been eroded, and we've now got we've now got 5.
What was that initial type?
It was 109.
109.
Which is
okay.
the workhorse.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are 100 plus probably of those in the UK. It is the workhorse for charter. I think that's starting to change. I think we're getting more varied fleets now. But we run from 109, 169. So we've got 4 or 5 109s, 3 169s. We've got a 139, new last September, 7-seat 139. And then we have the Flexjet owned S76. So all those are managed on behalf of owners.
Yeah.
And then we've got 3 S76 C++s, 2 for the UK market and 1 for the European market. And then we've got the big boy, the S92, which we took over operating the end of last year for a private owner. I think it's the only charterable VIP S92 in the world.
Right.
There are 13, 14 head of state S92s. I think a pharmaceutical company in New York has one for moving its clients, and then GFX CT, which was repainted at Airglaze in Germany. It's been re-interioured. So that's a 16-passenger, 2 cabin server seats, and obviously 2 pilots. It's got a lavatory on board. It's tastefully done in tartan, a tartan interior, which kind of when you first look at it, you go, why have they gone with tartan? And you think, well, what would you go with? I mean, it's a crazy aircraft. You could kind of try and go greys and be very cool and modern, but it's mainly used for sporting events. The owner uses it for shooting, and actually the tartan it works. So it's launched in March for Cheltenham was the first charter. We're expecting probably to do about 100 hours a year charter on the aircraft.
And which models see the most action, the most flights?
For us, it's the S76.
S76, yeah.
And that is really, I think, probably comes back to the owner availability. We own the aircraft.
Yeah.
We don't have to go to the owner and say, can we use the aircraft? There are no limits to us on how much hours, because many of the managed owners will say, okay, I want 50, 100 hours, 150 hours on the aircraft, so you're limited in that. So our first 76 last year that we brought onto the market, that did 400 hours.
Yeah.
Which for oil and gas, you're thinking, oh, they're lightweights. But when every sector's kind of, 20-minute average sectors, it's, trying to actually do more is very difficult because you probably need an hour between charters to avoid kind of clashing and being late. Well, we weren't late, but obviously the passengers are regularly late. So 400 hours is a pretty busy charter machine. That's flying most days.
Okay.
So yeah, we obviously you've got movements. We do around about 1,800 hours of flying last year. 4,000 movements for those 1,800 hours.
Okay. Yeah. How about SaxonAir, Jordan? Can you?
Yeah, so not quite as good going on the 76 there for Will, but yeah, we do about our sort of main 109, which does have an owner, but the owner very very rarely uses it. We did about 320 hours on it last year of charter. The single engine side, maybe more at the sort of 150 to 200. Like I said again, that's because of the volume of the trips, more smaller pleasure flying, 10-15 minute circuits out of Norwich or whatever. So yeah, no, very different. And yeah, I think we came in a bit shorter than Flexjet. I think we did about 1,500 hours last year, and yeah, similar number of sectors. Like Will said, very short sectors. Our average sector time will probably be smack bang on what it is, about 20-25 minutes.
And are you seeing new clients, or is it predominantly an established clientele?
Yeah, so from my side, we get a lot of one-hit wonders with the single engine stuff. As I said, that sort of credit cardable bucket list. Clients, so they're not ones that you're going to then follow up with to buy a helicopter or buy some hours off of you or anything like that. You kind of know who's the ones who are just a one hit and done. But yeah, and then there is a lot of repetitive business. We have, and I'm sure same with Flexjet, have quite a lot of loyal customers. They tend to like to just stick to one operator once they've found one. But then actually there is a rise of charter brokers now. So love them or hate them, there are a lot of charter brokers out there, some really big ones who are actually
How could you hate them?
Well, exactly. I like them, to be honest. We do about 60% of our work with a charter broker, and they do all your marketing, they do all your cold calling for you, and all you have to do is just reply to an email in your inbox. So, but some people, I think they can get themselves in a bad name at times with, overcharging clients and stuff at times and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there's a place for them, and they're well used. So,
Okay. Will, new faces on your aircraft, new clientele?
Yeah, we've seen quite a few. I mean, it is that education that certainly for us, it's been people transitioning from private jets. Oh, we didn't realise you do helicopters as well. We've got a product on the S76 where we'll lease a fraction to a client, so they actually have a block book of hours, and we have about at the moment, on that first aircraft we launched last year. Of those 400 hours, 300 were pre-sold.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
On contracts. So yeah, we're seeing people who, well, actually one of our owners moved house as a result of having helicopters. He actually thought, well, I can live in the Cotswolds and come into London.
Yeah.
Saved some money on property prices, moved out of North London and is in the Cotswolds now, and he probably flies 2 or 3 times a week with us.
Yeah. So overall picture, is the charter market in growth? And if so, what's driving it? Or has it reached its natural level?
It's growing, from my point of view, it's definitely growing steadily. I often find that we have more customers than I do helicopters available, which is always a good thing. Well, it's not a good thing, but at least we know we're at capacity to what we can sell. I think it's always steadily rising. It's a relatively bulletproof part of the market. It doesn't get hit too hard by external factors, be political or economical. I think it's sort of steadily trending in the right direction from us. We're growing year on year.
And what's driving that demand?
Time saving. We call ourselves the black cabs of the skies in a way.
Rubbish roads.
Yeah, rubbish roads. Most people. Will's just given a great case study there. You can be in and out of the Cotswolds in 25 minutes or half an hour, depending on where they are, versus sitting in 3 hours in a car. So a lot of time saving for a lot of these high net worth individuals. Time is money. The more time they can spend a day in the office and fly home at the end of the day and go and see the family. That's a great success to them because their time is so valuable.
Will, do you think the market's in growth?
Gently.
Gently.
I don't think there's a huge rush. I think there is the environmental lobby. I think some people aren't flying because they don't agree with it. I think, or they use it as an excuse not to fly because it's actually really quite expensive, and it's a good way of not keeping up with the Joneses. Is say, I'm quite happy.
On the M6?
Yeah, exactly. I'm quite happy on the M6
for an extra couple of hours.
But I think one of the issues is supply of aircraft to the market. Right. As I said, a lot is driven by owners chartering the aircraft. We are losing clients out of the UK, ultra high net worths who are moving out of the UK. That is a thing. I know 3-4 helicopter owners who sold their helicopters last year and left the country, and so there isn't that helicopter out there to be chartered, and it's quite a different game owning your own aircraft and then chartering. The numbers become really quite tricky.
Yeah. Jordan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, mirror that exactly. We've probably got the charter demand, but there's less helicopters to manage, and as Will said, when you then look at putting a business plan together to do sole charter on an aircraft that you own and you're maintaining and you're paying for all the DOCs on, the margins becomes quite risky. Yeah.
Okay. So we're listening to my questions, but don't just rely on those. Send me some better ones. Send us some better ones via Slido, or old school, put your hand up and someone with a microphone will come. It's your opportunity to, and suiting the action to the word, we have something flick up. But you can ask with a microphone too. So can you discuss the single engine in a hostile marine environment?
Yeah, so from our point of view, it's kind of off limits. We do have floated aircraft, but in the UK in particular, we're basically restricted to what they call a coastal corridor on the single engine. So it's not very far at all. We pretty much just get over to the Isle of Wight.
Right. So that's the range then, Isle of Wight, is it? In a single?
Yeah, on the single side. Obviously, with the twins, you've got the 10 minutes from land. But yeah, single engine. Yeah, despite having the floats, we can't do anything at all out to sea on those commercially.
Yeah. Well, I don't suppose you deal with twins anyway.
Yeah, no. I mean, even twins. If you start going at say 10 minutes cruise time from the coast, you need floats, which the lighter twins don't tend to have.
That's the limit, is it? 10 minutes?
It's 10 minutes, 10 minutes of cruise. So in the 109, you can just make the Channel Islands with a slight dogleg from Portland. You can get it obviously across to kind of Paris works well. Yeah. Deauville is a real pain. You've got quite a dog's leg.
It's very nice there, though.
Very nice, yeah. But the larger machines do tend to have floats, so you can do that.
Yeah. Okay, well, please keep your questions coming. We've got our insiders here to answer them, and just send them rolling up. While you're coming up with questions, I'd just like to ask, we touched on what's slowing the market, what's holding the market back. Anything else, Jordan?
We've touched on the safety side. That can sometimes have an impact. Environmental at the moment, this question sort of related to that coming up there. We do get occasional customers that do have the money but are conscious about the flying. We do have to sort of piggyback onto the question here as well. We do have CO2. We do have carbon offsetting schemes. We do uplift SAF where possible.
Do people ask for it though?
Not that we find.
No?
We present certificates to our sort of top 10 clients of the year saying that we've offset all their flying, and sometimes, most of the time, we don't get a reply.
What's your sense of why that is? They don't know about it, they don't want to pay more for it, it's not available. Why is that?
Yeah, I think there's two types of customers. There's customers that we've probably been flying on in the helicopter world for 20 or 30 years that just don't really mind. It's one of those ones they're just quite happy to stick their head in the sand and hope that nobody throws orange paint on them as they get out of the helicopter.
Yeah. Be careful what we say in this. Yeah. Will, how green are your clients?
We're very green. No, we do what we can. Obviously, it's not ideal. And as a private jet company, we've got 300 aircraft bouncing around the skies. We've got 4Air, which is one of the group companies which do our emissions. And so for all our flying, we do 300% offset for carbon. And on the larger cabin, we do a 5% SAF book and claim through 4Air. So that means filling up jets in Los Angeles where it's a little cheaper.
Yeah.
But you asked, do customers ask for it? I don't think we've ever been asked. Sometimes we get the big corporates where ESG departments will come through and say, can you send us some data, and you send them the certificates showing what we've done. For our owned aircraft, it's a mandatory. I'm setting a management agreement up. We get down and say, well, we put you on 4Air silver level, which is 300% emissions and a 5% SAF, and not one of them has blinked. And it's really not expensive in the big scheme of things.
Yeah. Do they actually ask for it? No. Okay. All right. And let's get down to basics and talk costs. I think I know the answer to this, but is the cost of the helicopter service absorbed within fractional?
Yes, to some extent. So, as I'm often reminded, we have some lovely offices in both Mayfair and Farnborough. Excellent setup, and when it was just a helicopter company, we were working out of a porter cabin in Dunsfold, so we definitely sit on the coattails of the jets, and a lot of the overhead is absorbed. The helicopter service within Flexjet is kind of more the tender to the super yacht, really. We're there for the last mile, and that. So yeah, it's a kind of an integrated program.
Do you see growth in that link between fixed wing and rotary for you, given this huge hinterland? I mean, how much growth is there, do you think? Oh
yeah, absolutely. So last year we didn't really push our interchange model because of availability of the aircraft. This year with another London aircraft, we're actually being more proactive. So go into the system, look ahead to what jets coming across the Atlantic, coming into London airports. We're now going through our owner services team and then out offering a client, we see you coming into London, would you like to use a helicopter? Quite often they've got it under their programme anyway, so it's not actually costing them anything, they just say yes and helicopter will turn up.
Jordan Smith from SaxonAir, is there UK demand for larger cabins? I think we've had a partial answer to that, and we'll come back to Will for his view and the Sikorsky. But let's start off with you. What's your take?
Yeah, I think so. And if there's anyone here with a spare 139 that they want to give a go to us, we'd love it. We've had one on our radar for a while. One of our private owners was thinking of transitioning over to a 139. We gave them, maybe not quite as much as a conventional 109 because of the price points. I think there is an increasing demand, particularly the Middle Eastern crowd, the American crowd. Bigger is better. And everybody nowadays wants to take, as many passengers as they can, as many bags as they can. They don't want to worry too much about, C of G and have luggage limitations. So these sort of bigger aircraft, particularly around the London market, with Will's model with the airport interlines, what you don't want to end up doing is getting the passengers on, but the bags have to go by road and turn up 2 hours later.
Yeah. Will, tell us a bit more about large cabins.
Yep. So we're definitely seeing a trend for larger cabin. There's not a huge amount of availability again for larger cabin. We've got R76s. SaxonAir has got a 139. Capital have got 3 145s which have a varying availability, and that's a couple of EC155, but. There's not a huge amount. I think one of the issues is if you're a 139 owner and you can afford 15 million euros for a new 139, you're probably not that interested in chartering it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 139s in the UK market, in the VIP, certainly the King isn't chartering out his machine yet, hasn't got to that. You've got JCB, Dyson does charter a little bit. And then you've got SaxonAir and ourselves chartering on a 139, but they're not that available.
Okay.
You've then got the 109, which with 6 of you in his multi-pilot is difficult. I think something larger, 160, 429 is probably where we need to go to incorporate more people.
Jordan Smith, any views on shared ownership? Any experience with shared ownership models?
We've got one. It's not the happiest of stories. It's always arguing over one owner uses it for 100 hours, the other one uses it for 10 hours, and they have to pay equal on the maintenance, for example. So it is a big push at the moment. A helicopter suddenly becomes much more affordable if you've got a business partner that you can do a shared ownership option with. We don't tend to find that whether it's something that we need to push more and see if there's an appetite for it from our clients. But usually, the preferred structure for us is generally one owner that we deal with from there. Okay.
Will, last few minutes now, brief answers, please. Rotary charter services by 2030. Are we going to be hopping in eVTOLs?
Ooh, good question. I don't know.
Would you want to?
Yeah, definitely. Our view on it is when there's an aircraft that can carry out the mission, we'd absolutely be keen to use it, and it's definitely happening. There's no doubt about it. It's just who will get there first. The regulatory airspace.
Yeah.
Landing sites are always going to be an issue. Battersea is still limited to 12,000 movements a year. Whether that cap comes off when electric aviation starts happening, but it's definitely coming in. God, great machines, amazing.
But that Battersea doesn't want cheap eVTOLs on their very expensive FATO, do they?
Well, no, it's a land value. Battersea was probably worth 30 million, I think, when it was bought, the landing pad, and you've got to get a return of income on that. So, central London landing spots are always going to be expensive.
Yeah. Jordan, charter in 2030.
Yeah, I think we're watching with interest as to what's coming down the pipes with all these different companies. We know that it's going to eventually, I think right off the bat it might not affect us too much, but I think as the technology grows and it becomes well established, I believe certainly at my age of 28, I'll be transitioning in the next 5 or 10 years to probably being an ops manager of an eVTOL fleet.
In 10 years? Within
I-
10 years?
That's where I would put it. I think within 5 years is probably we're going to have some interesting stuff happening. But I think maybe 7 to 10 years before I imagine it starts having an impact on my availability or competing with my fleet. Personally.
I mean, I think globally, 5 to 10 years, absolutely. I think London as a specific use case is slightly further out.
So we were promised, of course, for the Paris Olympics, and that sort of didn't happen. Maybe we'll come back and ask it for about the LA Games coming up. Yeah. Right, well, thank you very much for those insights. My thanks to Will Fanshawe, MD at Flexjet Motors, and Jordan Smith from SaxonAir. Thank you so much for an entertaining debate. Cheers.